we've got an update with regards to the Cardporn lawsuit. Ken Goldin is now being sued by the Spiegel brothers. This is a pretty interesting one that we've spoken about a few times. We've got the updated legal documents. I'm going to take you through all the new information, take you through, the evidence so far, and essentially some insights onto what actually were the happenings of this whole situation. So let's jump straight into it. Now, the first thing I'll talk to is essentially a quick summary of the facts of date in case you haven't seen this before, which I might be a bit surprised with, but that is okay. Now, essentially, Cardporn around 12 to 18 months ago did a post. They've done a follow-up one at the start of this year where they talked about how this Lebron James rookie card popped up on Goldin Auctions, and they determined, along with others, that the card may have been patch swapped in the past. And the way they sort of came to this, understanding was that essentially this is a photo from 2005 that they have found somewhere on the internet, and it was 44 of 99, very clearly a single colored card. Now, when it showed up on Goldin Auctions and a few websites in prior years, because like I said, this has been floating around for a number of years, the card looked like this. Obviously much better, and again, still 44 of 99. Now, what can often happen in these instances is that cards get damaged, they get replaced. So essentially that's where people's thought process went initially with this. Now, there's also some metadata to show that the original card with the white patch is from 2005. And the metadata does clearly show that, but sort of circumvent around the point that the card was patch swapped, right? Or the card was actually replaced or damaged by the manufacturer. People have done some pretty detailed analysis on, trying to spot, are these in fact the same card or not? And it looks as though that they are in fact the same card. I'll get back to that letter in a second. So people like Cardporn, as an example, have done things like this where they're overlaying, the image that they have from 2005 with the image that they have today. And it clearly shows that, the cards look identical, right? The numbers, the orders in the same exact spot. They take it one step further, and you can sort of see here that some of the, edging damage and things like that also marry up between the two. So it couldn't really be a damage replacement card. Now, please stay with me because I'm going to get to the new points in a second. This is just going to be a, explanation of the facts to date. Now, the brothers themselves have basically had this document from Upper Deck that says the card was damaged in the past, it was replaced. So that was their evidence to say, the card's actually genuine, which is pretty interesting because like I just said, those overlays indicate that the card wasn't replaced, it was patch swapped, because there's some similarities, or basically a lot of similarities between the two overlays, right? You're seeing the same chipware, the same sort of auto placement, so on and so forth. And this is where things get interesting because Cardporn, having, seen all this sort of stuff, they reached out to Ken Goldin, having this card be on that auction, and from then onwards, Ken basically spoke to Upper Deck. Upper Deck retracted their statement, basically saying they can't confirm the information within this letter. So therefore, Ken didn't feel comfortable. He basically withdrew the card off the auction house. And essentially, with all that information, the brothers have basically turned around to Cardporn and to Ken Goldin and have said, you guys have defamed us. You've got some market manipulation going on because you yourselves have these cards. You have friends who have these cards. There's some sort of racketeering ring. You're using this platform to manipulate the market in some capacity. And it's, a pretty interesting one, which is how we get to today, where you've got, Ken Goldin now being named in this lawsuit as a defendant, as are Goldin Auctions themselves. So you can sort of see here, Goldin Auctions, Ken Goldin named as defendant, the Spiegel brothers are the plaintiffs. You've then got John Doe 1 being Cardporn themselves. So if you remember, the reason why we spoke about this in January is because these guys were trying to get some kind of, court approval to subpoena Instagram to get Cardporn's genuine name so they can sue them directly. What's interesting in this is there's also another defendant name, which I don't think we've seen before, and they are referred to as Card Collector 291. I'm not sure who these people are. But then it goes on to also state that there are John Does 3 through 10 that they're also looking at potentially suing in some capacity. Now, this situation is pretty interesting because essentially the case for the Spiegel brothers is targeting the fact that this image that, Cardporn have leveraged as part of their main reasoning for, chasing down Goldin Auctions, chasing down Upper Deck to get a retraction on that statement, is that this was photoshopped in some capacity by some random person back in the day. So this photo, could be from 2005 or it could be photoshopped altogether to try and manipulate the market, which is, pretty interesting considering we've got evidence that this photo was on the internet and on forums from early as 2017. I want to say there might even be some images somewhere from earlier than that. I might be wrong with quoting those numbers, but that is, a pretty interesting statement to try and infer, right? They're saying this is photoshopped. You should ignore what this is saying because BGS themselves have confirmed the card to be genuine, which, if you're somebody that's on the nose within the hobby, that these graders make mistakes all the time with regards to patch swap cards. It's nothing new that they're going to miss something, right? And these brothers are essentially, stating a few things, and there's a few key elements here that I think speak to why they're going after Ken Goldin and probably give you some context as well. So essentially, the first point is they talk about giving, Ken Goldin permission in the first place to use this letter by Upper Deck. And if I remember correctly, these brothers are the ones that sourced the letter from Upper Deck in 2019, even though they've owned the card for a few years before that. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, so please don't quote me on that. They then talk to Ken Goldin, having told the brothers that he's spoken to Cardporn and determined that Cardporn is looking at doing a story on the situation. Things transpired a little bit further than that, with Ken Goldin reassuring the brothers that he's on their side. He's going to make sure that things go their way. They're not going to get burned, right? He's going to fight for them as long as possible. There's a few other steps here where they basically talk about, the pricing of the card at the time. It reached, 690,000 active bids. From there, essentially, Ken Goldin decides to withdraw the auction, as is noted here in bullet point 129, based on a conversation that he had with Cardporn and then with Upper Deck. He essentially had a conversation with Upper Deck, said, this is all the information we have on hand. How did you guys get comfortable issuing this letter of authenticity? Upper Deck turned around and apparently told Ken that that is not something they can support any further. They don't know why the letter was produced in the first place. I believe it was by a former employee. Someone, again, can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But this is where the spiciness comes, right? You've got a letter, as I said in my last video, developed and put out by a manufacturer saying they did a certain thing, right? Yet they've then retracted on it when they've had a bit more evidence come to light. Now, again, it's a pretty interesting situation given that the chipware and things like that are on that card. So let's assume that image of the white patch is photoshopped, right? And it always looked the way that it did, and that's why the chipping aligns, so on and so forth. And those cards imaged from 2017 and earlier are genuine. When did Upper Deck state that they did this card replacement, right? Because I showed you that letter, which again I'll show you right now. They talk about having replaced the card. It'd be really interesting to see when this did occur, because if Upper Deck do have some information on hand when they did do this patch swap, right? And apologies if you can hear my dog barking, but let's say that did occur. At what point did that image of the white card first show up, right? If that is the same thing, right? If let's take the situation where this is a genuine image, right? Or some capacity, it's not photoshopped, but somehow there's an image out there of a white patch on the internet where we're comfortable that it is the case. The fact that you've got an image out there that's from 2005, has the same chip where you're seeing on this now card with the better looking patch, if that is the replaced card, when did Upper Deck replace it? Because if they replaced it in 2017, or they replaced it in 2018, or maybe even earlier, yet there's images earlier on the internet that can be confirmed that they are earlier on the internet, and they have the same chipware as the replaced card, does that tell you that Upper Deck didn't actually replace the card themselves? I don't know. To me, it does. Could Upper Deck have, actually cracked the card open, replaced the patch, and then put it back together, which is why we see the consistencies? It's a possibility. But you guys get the point there. It's a really interesting one. Is this image you're seeing on screen right now photoshopped? Or, is it, a lie to get the Upper Deck letter in the first place? That's where the interesting information is going to come from. And, it's a pretty weird thing, because I almost don't know how this is going to land. I'm not in the detail, obviously, but it's a pretty interesting situation. This is another statement here that the brothers have made with regards to, Goldin feeling the need to withdraw the auction based on the pressure from, the fan base that Cardporn do have, because the information, right, let's say it's true. All the images and we're seeing online, it is pretty, hard to argue against, right? And again, these are just my opinions in this situation, but there's another element here that I also wanted to flag with regards to a letter that Ken Goldin, or email I should say, wrote to the Spiegel brothers, where he talks about two situations. He's saying essentially they have this card in question, they need to withdraw it for this reason, but there's still somebody interested at purchasing the card for $1 million. And I think this is where the brothers are trying to get to with regards to their lawsuit, because I think they're trying to imply that there's some form of market manipulation happening here, and Ken Goldin uses information alongside Cardporn with, the apparent, fake photoshopped image of the white patch card to try and get this card to sell for less than what was expected, to either get the card in the hands of a friend or to try and manipulate the market a little bit further. Because from their perspective, they're saying, well, Ken, if the card's been patch shopped, why are you still trying to get a $1 million offer or sale for this card? Now, it's again pretty interesting situation. The outcome was that the card was, removed very clearly. Ken is saying there's zero doubt that the cards in the photos are identical. He's comfortable that the cards you're seeing from back in the day are from actually back in the day, so therefore the card couldn't have been replaced by Upper Deck because it shares the same similarities, so on and so forth. But essentially, that's where things are right now. And again, it's a pretty, alarming situation what this might mean for people within the hobby, in the end, because you've got these statements being made by these people with images from the internet from a number of years ago. Does that mean every time someone does something like that, calling out, potentially patch shop cards, you're doing fraudulent and defamation behavior? Like, again, take with that what you will. I'm really curious to get your thoughts on this down in the comments below, because like I said, it's really, really interesting. And to essentially summarize the whole situation, right, you've got Spiegel Brothers basically saying Cardporn have built their story off the back of a photoshopped image. I don't think they have any information within those documents that dictates how they're comfortable that the image has been photoshopped. But regardless, that's something we're going to see come out, once the court case does go ahead. But yeah, so that's what they're saying. It's been photoshopped. Therefore, the upper deck letter is correct because maybe, the replacement card happened before it was photoshopped. But then upper deck, Cardporn, and Ken Goldin are going to say, well, we've got images from back in the day. Upper deck have said the card was replaced. They can no longer do that. You're saying the replacement date was this date. We've got card and images earlier than that. It's the same card. It's got the same chipware, so on and so forth. It is what it is. So again, apologies for my dogs barking in the background. But that is sort of it for this situation. Please share your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know if I missed anything. Again, I'm sure you can find the legal document somewhere online. I've probably missed things. Hopefully I got everything 100% accurate. But again, it's a very interesting thing, and it has, pretty big ramifications for, people commenting on things within the hobby long term. I'm hoping people that are doing genuinely good work with trying to identify, patch shop cards and trying to have databases and trying to have, instances where they're discussing these things on forums and calling these things out. I hope they're not being portrayed as the negative dudes, right? Because they're just trying to make the hobby a better place. And yeah, nobody's stating images are 100% accurate outside of what Cardporn and Ken Goldin have said themselves. But also, like I said, they've had conversations with Upper Deck directly. Upper Deck is not going to issue a letter and then retract that letter unless they are very bloody confident, right? And you'd say in the same sort of instance in the first place, they shouldn't have issued a letter in the first place if they weren't confident. But it looks as though there's been maybe differing stories on both sides of this sort of thing. So let's sort of watch this space and see what happens next. Thanks for watching. Please share your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.